Sorry, we were just talking about, I guess, mental challenges and
Yeah,
emotional challenges, which is relevant still. So
big time. I mean, well, we can really dive into that stuff, but while you were talking about distractions, that was a big part for me on how I sort of navigated, those issues, those times, those difficult times, and a lot of that was playing the drums because, I learned pretty interesting, but the reason why artists dive so heavily into their work is because the brain I'm not a scientist or anything, but the brain can't process two two things at the same time. It can process lots of things, but when you're doing your art, you have a lot of focus. You playing music, there's a lot of focus. Just same thing where you can't have a conversation with two different people at the same time. You can kind of hear reminiscence, but at some point you just have to sort of stop and say, oh, I have to focus with this conversation here. So what artists would do is, troubled artists would dive heavily into the work because it was a way of separation from reality. And I've done a lot of podcasts in which I talk about the fact that, like, when I was going through some of my most traumatic times in life and really stressful times, getting on those drums for 30 minutes, 40 minutes for a set kind of gave me this relief, this sort of mental relief. Not saying that it wasn't going to be there when I got off the drums, but for a moment my brain wasn't able to sort of handle both things at the same time. And you do that every day, a little bit every day, and it sort of gave me this opportunity to take a step back from the troubles that I was going through and focus in something else. And a lot of times when you revisit something with a different headspace, it's easier to process it and, easier to look at it from a different perspective. And so you get off the drums an hour later and you're like, you know, here, let's kind of come at this from a different angle rather than let the brain get really like panicked, and then you can't do anything, and it just sort of takes over. Brain is very powerful.
oh, definitely.
But yeah, so playing the drums, and I've told this to people before, but playing the drums, regardless if it is something that brings me success and opportunities, is something I do anyways. It's sort of very calming, therapeutic thing for me mentally and emotionally. So I'm gonna do it regardless of, whether it's in front of anybody or just by myself.
Definitely. Do you find that getting on the drums, the positive impact in I guess we'll call it a distraction from the negative emotions. Do you find that like playing gigs is even better, or is practicing enough to sort of give you that distraction?
That's a good question. I think it definitely gigs. There's a lot more elements to it that keep you distracted, whether it's the audience, whether it's the traveling, whether it's, the setting up process. There's a lot more going on. It's kind of like going to the gym by yourself or going to take a class. It's like
Yeah.
when you're around other people doing it, your motivation's a little different, where you can easily convince yourself, I don't want to be on the treadmill anymore. I don't want to practice anymore.
Yeah.
I'm too distracted. So, but they all have their, sometimes you don't have a gig. Sometimes I'm not in the
Oh yeah.
studio, so I need to do something. Um, and again, with like even diving into, it doesn't even have to be playing for me. It could be taking a photograph or doing something artistic with the drums, like that I do with my brother or something like that. It's like, I think that the drums as a whole, there's that's the piece that keeps me distracted, because there's lots of different, ways to approach the drums, and it's this thing that I love, and it's
Hmm.
this thing that's given me lots of opportunities. And every day that I think more about it or spend my time thinking about it, I come up with something different. And then, a couple weeks down the road, be like, what was I stressed out about, 2 weeks ago, kind of thing. So everybody finds what that outlet is. And for me, this was a big part of helping me get to the point where I am now.
Touching on the differences at a gig or a recording or anything, like you said, a gym, in a class, it's like you've got the pressure of not screwing up. in front of other people as well. So whereas for me, I know for myself, if I was in the practice room, I could easily just let those distracted feelings come back in and then just end the practice session effectively. But you're fully engaged at a gig. You can't let others down. So you're like just immersed in it.
Absolutely. I mean, you really, that's a great point, is there's other people on stage that are relying on you to kind of have your stuff together and step up, and of course I've played a million shows with band members who are going through something stressful, and you take a moment and say, all right, let's, we'll revisit this when we get back to the green room, and let's get on stage and channel that energy into some. I mean, we're all human. I mean, we're not robots. There's no on off switch for this stuff. And that's definitely, you find the tools that you're able to use in order to sort of separate yourself. But I don't know, if I'm stressed out and I walk on stage and I see a bunch of people in the crowd, I see my bandmates up there and we go into the first song, my brain can't process anything else at that point. There's maybe certain times during the set you can feel things creeping in, but you're right back into, something else. And I just feel like that's actually a really wonderful, I wouldn't call it a flaw, but it's kind of a flaw that your brain can't handle that much stuff. And that's actually a really great tool. And I don't say, distraction as like, well, I'm not going to deal with that, so I'm just going to do other things so I don't have to deal with it. It's not so much that. It's just giving yourself a break. It's pretty crazy how powerful the brain is to be able to convince you of things that may or may not even be happening at the time. So I think as humans, we all sort of, as we grow and get older, you find the ways that help you navigate life in general. And music's been a really big part of it for me.
Music can sort of it's funny because music can do it both ways. It could put you into an emotional state, depending on what you're listening to, but it's also able to help heal you, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And stuff like this is, one of the coolest things about music. I mean, if I just play drums in my room, that would be great. That would suffice to an extent. But when you're out there, you meet people like yourself. I have these conversations. I have a gentleman that I talked to in New York yesterday. We were talking about what success means to artists. It was like, I mean, I have a therapist that I pay $25 each week to talk to, and sometimes my most like pivotal moments are having these conversations with other artists and other creatives, and you're like, wow, you're not alone, in this thinking. You're not alone in what you're going through, and wow, that's a really great perspective. And then 2 hours later, you get off those phone calls, and you're like, man, that was awesome. Like, I didn't think about it from that angle. And I think that's the piece that's actually really exciting, is the more you sort of open up about it, the more you connect with people, people for, thousands and thousands of miles away who are going through their own sort of thing. You find like, wow, I feel like I got some camaraderie in this. And, a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're drummers. So we have a connection in that, right? But then you break it down to the human level and you're like, man, this is a good dude, like, or a really cool person. And they went through something similar that I'm going through. And, it's great to talk about drums, but it's also great to talk about, navigating life.
Speaking of success, this wasn't on my list of questions to ask, but I can see that was it 6-time Session Muso of the Year?
Yes, 6-time. I was named the Session Musician of the Year for the Boston Music Awards. So that's actually coming up December 20th. And I won't know until the night of the show whether it's number 7. And it's been very, a really, really special, award to be recognized in the city. I mean, I think, I've got nominations from an international level, but there's something about being recognized in your sort of your home city where you started, where you sort of cut your teeth, where you made those connections and networked and started building up your career, to have people recognize what you're doing here, whether or not it's, I mean, outside of Boston. Does anybody care? Probably not, but that means the world to me, to be sort of, I never left. I never went to LA. I never went to Nashville or anything like that. So this is where I wanted to build a career. And I did it. Granted, people are always like, maybe your resume isn't filled with the, A-listers and stuff like that, but doesn't diminish the quality of the work that I've played on. And I did that all from here. I think this is a great city for music. I think the Boston Music Awards really works really hard to find the artists that you may not know about. I mean, I mean, I don't know if you know who Noah Kahan is. He's a sort of a folk singer. Last year, 2 years ago, nobody knew who he was. Now he just sold out 2 straight nights at Fenway Park.
Wow.
Which is the baseball stadium here, which is 37,000 people. So that's 80,000 people in 2 nights. And he's like a local guy from New England. And it's like those platforms, those Boston Music Award platforms, bring these artists up. And now all of a sudden people from other cities are going, what's going on in Boston? And what used to be, for big touring artists, what used to be, all right, you come and you go as far as New York, and that was it. Those were the markets that you came. Now, if you don't come to Boston, like it's a bad move on your part. They're putting all this infrastructure into to put the right venues here. And that all stems from a solid local music scene that really champions, in a city that champions the arts and culture in the city. So it's a really cool to be recognized amongst people who are have unworldly talent. So I always get nervous around this time because I'm going to go, and I think my aunt is going to the music awards and my parents usually go. So it's like, they haven't been in 3 years. So I'm hoping that I get another call for this one, but we'll see.
So what do you think's changed then? Because I did check out some other interviews that you were in, and you did mention that same thing of how the limits used to be New York and whatnot. What's changed for Boston apart from having new venues? Are there more musicians sort of getting known locally, or?
Well, that's a great question. This scene has always been great. They've had a really very strong underground hip hop scene. I mean, I don't know. Do you know who Bobby Brown is?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, Bobby Brown came from here. New Edition came from here. New Kids on the Block. I mean, we've always had sort of like artists that sort of started here and, gravitated to stardom. But I think if you go, well, you have one big artist come out of Boston and people recognize that, but you have 1,000 coming out of LA, the eyes tend to assume that's where all the talent is. But that's not how it works. It's just a matter of, I mean, it's a very fickle industry. If the industry picks and chooses how artists gravitate to success, and obviously the industry's changed since I started to Spotify and online platforms that help elevate visibility for artists. But again, like a lot of that stuff behind the scenes is paid for and stuff like that. So, I'm sure at some level it's gross and you don't want to know about it, but consistency, Boston has always had a great music scene. And I think what happens is you start putting bigger and better venues in the city. You start having a city that's championing the talent that's coming out of here. You start having artists that start here, and instead of going to LA, they stick it out here long enough to have enough people in the industry kind of looking over. Plus, well, not to mention, but there's I'm at Berkeley College now. Within a 3 to 4 mile radius, there's like 500,000 college kids.
Wow.
You got Harvard, MIT, Boston University, Northeastern University, Berkeley, the Conservatory, Emerson. There is an abundance of colleges around here. And you know who makes or breaks bands? College kids, because they're the ones that go hard on the listening. College radio. You get 500,000 college kids to like your band, you're off to the races. You'll never need to work another job your entire life. So
Yeah.
that's why that it's important to come here. And the thing is, that's not new. These colleges didn't just pop up in the last 20 years. They've been here. It's just a matter of seeing the trajectory on who's helping grow artists and helping the visibility of artists. Well, there's a lot of colleges here. College radio is huge. We're going to start going into these markets and really sort of like embracing what's going on here. Plus, it helps when the city puts or developers start putting in venues that are, 3 to 5,000 seat, 5 to 8,000 seat. Now you got venues that are capable of holding, the caliber of artists that you want to come into the city.
Mm.
The unfortunate side about that is developers also come in and they put up condos and apartments and kick out the local, the 150 to 300 cap rooms. So now you find people trying to think outside the box. All right, what's a venue that's not a venue that we can play music in? So you're finding a lot of that happening now, but it prevails, somehow.
And speaking of success, what is your definition of success for yourself now?
That's I love that question because it's definitely changed since I was 12 and I have this conversation with a lot of these kids here, whether they're just about to graduate or right when they get in as freshmen. What do you want? What are your expectations here? And then what are your expectations when you leave? So for me, 12-year-old me on this podcast says, I want to play in front of 80,000 people every night. I want to tour the world. I want to be on the road 300 days a year. I want all the success in magazines and everything you can think of. That's what I want to do. I think that's changed slightly. I don't want to be on the road 300 days a year. I'm not saying that, if a great opportunity came around, that I wouldn't take it. But I think for me, my idea of success is being able to do what I do consistently. It's not a monetary thing. It's whether at the end of the year, I look back at the year and say, that was a good year. How can I make the next year better? Then I go and make the next year better. I do another round of goals for myself and try to make the next year better. If I can keep doing that every year, I'm always going to enjoy what I do. So I think my idea of success is just being able to do this and push myself to make each year better than the last. I was talking about this yesterday with that guy I was telling you about from New York, and I made a list when I was young about my music goals and what I wanted to accomplish, and I've kept it in my pocket for a year, 25 years.
That's amazing.
And the goals that I made back then they're not silly, but that's what I thought I wanted, and I keep it in my wallet. And every time one of those things happens, I get to check off that box. And that's the piece that, like he was saying, well, what happens when you check off all those boxes? I said, you make another round of boxes to check off. And he's like, well, then you never, he's like, so it's a never ending list of goals. And I said, he's like, so, and he brought up a really great point. He goes, so are you satisfied when you don't, if you didn't check all the boxes? I go, no, I'm never satisfied. I'm always pushing to do that. He's like, so if you're always adding boxes, you'll never be satisfied with And it got me thinking. I was like, I guess you're kind of right. It's kind of like this weird mind, you know, fudge, that like oh, I guess if I think about the fact that I'm constantly striving and constantly making new boxes, I'm never completing anything. But I think in my mind, every time I make a new box, it's just a drive or a motivation, kind of keeps the fire alive for me to go after that. I mean, I have the weirdest, my 12-year-old goals were so strange. They were like, in a lot of those boxes I haven't been checked off, like, because they're like, you know, one of them was to play this one venue in Boston called the Paradise, because at the time I made it, it was like a 600 cap room, but that's where like all my favorite bands would go to play. And I live in Boston. I never played the Paradise for the first time until I was in my 20s. And that's like 15 to 18 years of waiting to play this one venue. And the funny thing is, like, it was all because that opportunity never presented. I never got an opportunity. I was never in the right band, or I was never given that opportunity. I mean, since then I've played the Paradise, 20, 30 times at this point. But the fact was, and this is it's not a problem, but this is the issue that I find with a lot of these kids, is they put time limits on these goals that they set for themselves. They need that instant gratification. And it was like, I never put a time limit on when I was going to play the Paradise. I just said, well, I'm going to play it sometime. So there I am, like, in my late 20s, in the corner of the Paradise, like checking off a box on a list when I was like 13 years old. And it was like, that was really cool to me. So when I talk to these kids about setting goals and setting expectations and going after those goals, and I was like, one comes in, I said, all right, what do you want? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What's your goal to make it? I want to play arenas. Awesome. That's a great goal. I love that. I want to play arenas too. And okay, so if you don't hit it in 5 years, what's going to happen? It's like, well, if I don't hit it in 5 years, I'm going to pick something else to do, because that's a long time to wait. And I was like, that's true. But what happens if on the 5th year, day one of the 5th year, you still haven't played an arena, but it just so happened that had you stuck it out, on day 10, you were going to get a call to go play an arena. So all you had to do was wait 10 more days and you would have gotten that call. But you said, no, 5 years, I'm done. I'm going to go figure something else out. I was like, that's the problem, is you cannot set time limits for these things. You set the goal, you set it aside, you put that fishing pole in the water, you put that pin on the board for that one, and you go off and do the rest of the stuff you want to do. You know that you want to do this, but it'll happen. You just got to put it on pause for a second until that opportunity comes. And I really try to hammer that home, because I feel like a lot of people give up really quickly. And this is an easy industry to give up in very quickly.
Big time.
And so I think, and so in my life now, my goals are, I want to play on great records. I want to play with new artists. I want to do cool things. Like 2 summers ago, I got a dream to do the Seth Meyers show and be the late night guest drummer there. And that was something I waited like 7 or 8 years to be able to have that opportunity. And that one was like totally out of left field. I was sitting on my couch and got that call at like 11 p.m. And it was like, holy smokes. Like, I wasn't thinking about it, wasn't expecting it, wasn't anything. And it was like, damn, that's really how it does happen. When you least expect it, that opportunity comes. So I like to try and tell these kids, like, hey, just set the goals, put it on a piece of paper, put it on your vision board, or whatever they call that thing, put it up there and keep doing what you're doing, and let those things fall. Because I guarantee, if your goal now is to play arenas, in 5 years, if you keep doing what you're doing, your goal may be like, actually, I don't want to play arenas. I kind of just want to make records in the studio. So you pivoted at some point to do something else, and
Yep.
you're happy doing it. So don't, don't not go after that thing, but you may find that it's something different down the line. And that's what I found. I'm like, I've traveled, I've toured, I've been on the road, and I'm like, it's exhausting. I mean, I've talked to drummers who are at the highest level of the industry, playing the Super Bowls, playing the White House, meeting the presidents, playing in front of hundreds of thousands of people every night, having people set up their drums for them, getting on a tour bus, sleeping in a hotel, seeing the world. And a lot of them look at me and be like, yeah, I want what you have. You get to go home at the end of the day. You get to see your kids. You don't have to live out of a bag. You're not, like, the grass is always greener. And sometimes I look at them like, dude, you've met like four of the five last presidents. They're like, yeah, but they weren't there to see me. They were there to see the person I was playing with. I just happened to be invited, or
Mm.
you just played the Super Bowl. And it's like, and they would be like, did you see me on the Super Bowl? Was I visible, or was I behind something else? It's like, okay, I guess, like, when you break it down to its, like, minimum state, it's like, yeah, I guess I go to work, I go make some records at night, I go home, I get to get on the phone with my kid, I get to, go see some friends. I guess that is pretty cool, but I still want to play the Super Bowl. I still want to go to the White, do cool things, but it's you just got to enjoy the process, I think, is the short end of it.
That's exactly what I was hoping to sort of get in and say is, I mean, of course, I've just did the 6-day Tony Robbins thing, so I'm gonna slip in some nuggets of wisdom where I can.
Yeah.
But he said that you think that achieving the goal is what's going to make you happy, but really it's the process. Achieving the goal, the happiness or satisfied feeling doesn't last long. Once it's done, it's like, okay, all right, now on to the next thing. So that's why I admire how you said your list of goals is constantly growing, is because I guess if you're truly passionate about music or drumming, then there really is no end to it. You're just a constant, you just got to chase that constant growth and continue to improve and improve. I don't think even for myself, I'll never be happy. There will always be the next thing. So it's really inspiring to hear that you yourself are of the same mindset.
Well, to be honest with you, even that question was brought up to me yesterday. It was like, that kid just so happens to know this one thing that I've, like, that has been the bane of my existence for what I want. I won't say what it is, but, like, I was like, no, if I get that, like, if that happens, I'm done. Like, everything else is good. The career has been a success. I'm happy. I just need to close the wheel. That's the 1% I don't have control over. That's it. I'd be happy. And he's looking at me like, is that true? Like, if I find out that you got that, you did it, and then I call you back and be like, so you happy, you satisfied? I'm going to be like, no, I made it some more, like, goals. Now that pie is opened back up again. But you're right. It's very fleeting. It's a very fleeting moment, but it's like, oh, I want that so bad. I'm going to go after it with everything I can. And in the meantime, if you don't enjoy the process, you lose, you aren't present for any of that stuff that you're accomplishing along the way. And that's the part that I figured out. I want that really, really bad, but along the way, I'm really enjoying this. That was so cool that this happened. What an amazing opportunity I had over here while I'm still chasing this. And I think that's the piece when you have blinders on and you're so focused on this one thing, you sort of lose the fact. If you take my dad often reminds me of this. We'll sit down and he'll go through all the things that I've accomplished. And because I'm like, you know what, I've done nothing. This is like it's a failure. Just this is how artists speak to themselves internally. My career's been a failure. I've sacrificed everything. I've done nothing in my career. This is so, and he'll sit there and he'll be like, go through all the things that I've accomplished, all the things that I used that made me psyched, and all the every newspaper clipping, every award, everything I've ever got. He's kept all of that, and he'll sit with me, and I'll look back and be like, he's like, do you remember this? Do you remember when this happened? Do you remember being on the front page of like, the Globe? And I was like, no. And he's like, those are things that you gotta be, remember, because they're not, you've made them smaller than this one thing that you wanted, and they're not smaller. They're different. But
Yeah.
you minimized them because they're not this thing up here. And that's where I've worked really hard to say, no, everything, every opportunity, every experience, every accolade is equally as big. And I'm very grateful for those things, and to be present for those times. Anytime somebody writes something about me, I'm like, oh, this is so grateful. And I really be present during the conversations, and really thankful them, and shout them out, give them a platform for, hey, this person wrote this really beautiful thing about me. So that's the piece that I work on now, is nothing is less or more. It's just a part of the journey the whole way.
And I think going back to how you have students who set a deadline on their success, whatever that may be, is like, it's important for them to know that it's the process that's the most enjoyable. You hear about it so many times, that cliche saying of it's the journey, not the destination. But and again, like you said, you don't know, on that first day of the 5th year, that could be it. So it might be good for these students to know that. Hang on, I've lost the the point that I was going to make. But it's like, rearrange your priorities, because it's not so much the goal. It's the process, and like what you pointed out, the offshoots of that path that come up.
Yeah, I mean, some of my most memorable tours in Europe, some of my most memorable like places I've been, it wasn't even about when somebody goes, hey, we're going on tour, and you go, okay, where are we playing? You're like, oh, what venue are we like playing? Oh, I've always wanted to play. Oh, look how cool that venue looks. I actually remember more about the journey that it took to even get to the venue, and what I saw, and what I ate, and what I did while I was, getting there, more so than, being on stage and playing. All of that stuff sort of blurs together. You get on stage, you play, you feel the energy, you love it, and you go to the next one and do that. But all that stuff in between, all those great conversations you have with your tour mates, all those great lunches and dinners you shared, and the stories that you shared, and the, experiencing a new city that you've never been to, that stuff outweighs that. But the piece that gets you super excited about it is when you see your tour schedule, and you see what city you're going to go, and you see, because I have a great story. I used to play in a band with this bass player who's older than me, and has well-traveled, has seen the world, and toured relentlessly his whole life. And I was in a band with him, and I remember we got our tour schedule, and we're talking, and we sat down, and he wrote down, he's like, I know exactly what restaurant we're going to go to in the city. I know where this really great cigar shop is in Germany that we have to go see. He had made it our entire itinerary just based on, okay, then we have to be at the venue to play this show. But leading up to that, we got all of these fun things that we get to do. And those are the memories that I keep really close to my heart, because I experienced them with somebody, tried new things, sat, in a really like boutique cigar shop and drank aged, rum from Cuba that I can't get in the United States for whatever political reasons they got going on. And it's like, that's the stuff I remember. And then, yeah, we played a show and I'm sure it was great, but the journey, the process, the people, the places, it's all peas except for the journey part. But those are the things that are the exciting piece. Those are the stuff that I tell my daughter. Like when she asks, like, where I've been, what's I can tell you every story that I tell people about when I've been on the road, or experiences or opportunities I've had because of music, have really nothing to do with the gig itself, which is really interesting. Because what are you going to say? Like, well, on the first song, I missed the snare on, the second verse, and cymbal stand broke, on the fourth song, stuff like that. It's like, it kind of all just blurs. But man, I remember going in between, where was it? Like, I can't remember. We're going to Nuremberg in Germany and coming from Berlin, maybe. And we stopped at a concentration camp on the way. And it's like, I had some of the most surreal experience walking around this concentration camp and being like, wow, this is like something I can't even wrap my head around. And then you kind of make your way to the show. And then in your mind, you're like, okay, I got to separate that for a minute so I can play this, this set. But yeah, like I said, I don't look for the immediate gratification. I don't look for that, like, this has to happen now or I'm giving up. Like, I think you're going to end up giving up a lot of cool things that you wasn't even going to be a part of your list.
I think it's glorified in lots of movies and whatnot. Like, take, I don't know, the first Rocky movie, for example. He wins at the end and it seems like that is it. But sure enough, there are another 4 or 5 Rocky movies that come after it where it's that same journey again and again.
Yeah.
But I think everyone is sort of brainwashed to think that once you've got that success, that's it. And being kids or younger students, let's say, that they need to understand that if you're in it, you need to be passionate about the craft itself, not so much the end result.
Absolutely. One question I love to ask my students is like, why do you love the drum when you were a kid and you didn't know about touring and equipment and like endorsements and big name artists and Spotify? Before all that, when you first got on the drums, what was it about it that you liked? And I was like, I don't know, I just like playing the drums. Yeah, that's it. We like playing the drums. We didn't have any goals or aspirations at that. You don't sit on a kit for the very first time and go, I hope this gets me a Grammy. It's like, you sit on the drums and you're like, this is so cool. I love that feeling that you got being on this instrument with nobody around, or your parents holding their ears, or you bashing away at this thing. There's your baseline. From there, if you don't look at the drums and playing the drums with that same feeling, no matter where you get to after this, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons. I'll say this every day. It doesn't matter what happens. When I get on the drums, I am happy. And that's why for 35 years, I have never not loved playing the drums. I love it. I love what it does mentally for me. I love what the feeling I get when I'm doing stuff, even if it doesn't sound good. It's a very calming, psychologically enjoyable thing for me to do it. I'm happy. And there's never been a point where I say, I don't really like playing the drums, but I have to because I have to play the drums. I love playing the drums. And that's where you got to start, regardless if it leads to anything. I mean, you may or may not accomplish 10% of the things you want to do in your career, and that's okay. I mean, that's all right to that, you accomplished 10% more than you thought you were going to do,
Yeah.
and it's all from the fact that you love doing this one thing.
Did you study at Berkeley before you taught there?
No, and and I, just to clarify, I don't actually teach at Berkeley. I work at Berkeley, but I'm on the staff side. So
Ah,
so I work in the drum department. I sort of oversee the department from, making sure that all the kids are sort of under my watchful eye, the faculty, all the visiting artists. Being faculty at Berkeley, I mean, while it's a really like wonderful thing, there's a lot of pressure
mm.
to, I mean, kind of like paid based on how many students
Oh,
you have
wow.
and stuff like that. So if you don't have a ton of students, it can be really, tricky and stressful. And from the staff side, there are a whole world of other benefits. I get to, instead of me every week teaching my class and teaching my students, I get involved in the marketing side of how to market the percussion department at Berkeley, how to adapt the curriculum, what new classes to bring in, how to incorporate electronics, who do the kids want for visiting artists? We got to try to bring them in, putting on those master classes in clinics, revising, making sure the syllabi is up to date, making those adaptations, and then also working with all the other departments at the school. The faculty don't get to, do that. They kind of live in the world of teaching students. So there's two sides of it. I come from a marketing and communications background. I have, a strong set of administrative skill sets, and I'm sort of really good with, logistical things and time management, stuff like that. And so I also get to be sort of this unofficial advisor and mentor to these students, because they come to me and they go, I want to talk studio work. I want to talk building a career, how to get endorsements. So the Career Center at this point has now asked me to come speak to outside the drum department students. So yes, the faculty would be really great, but I almost think that I would be better suited teaching a class on either marketing yourself, a DIY, mindset in the music industry, the business element, how to, create brand visibility for yourself. I mean, these are all significant attributes that will make you successful outside of being able to play your instrument really well. So that's what I'm working on, is sort of being that side. Hey, when you leave here and you're got your degree and friggin' ripping it on the drums, awesome. If nobody knows who you are, that's not going to lead to anything. So how do you market yourself? How do you present what you're capable of doing? How do you get out there? How do you network? All of those things are really valuable. And I think that I'm suited better to that side rather than, teaching somebody how to be really proficient on their instrument. I mean, I think that's subjective,
Yeah.
to an extent.
So then that's a good segue into, because I wanted to discuss JMU Creative.
Mm-hmm.
So my question was, how does that fit into your career? And I guess that skill set is directly what you said.
Absolutely. So I've been, when we talk about how long that I've been, sort of playing the drums and doing this, my dad is an artist, and my brother's an artist, my mom's an artist. They all work in the art world, but they all had regular jobs. My dad was an architect. My mom worked in the art department of Northeastern. My brother is a welder and a fabricator. My dad instilled in us that art should always be something you're passionate about, a hobby, something that you can use as a separation from reality. But if you rely on it to make money, you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself in an industry that's very uncertain and inconsistent. So I've always had that mindset to work and do music.
Yeah.
And regardless of how successful my music career got, I always made sure that there was a foundation or something stable that would allow me to not have the pressure of relying on the instrument to make my money and pay bills. So the JMU Creative is 25 years of, I have my master's in photography. I have a master's in digital media. I got my undergrad in marketing and communications. So I've run marketing departments for Fortune 500 companies. I've done brand visibility and marketing for industries, all, from recovery clinics to restaurants, to higher education institutions and stuff like that. So that was what I would always do regardless of playing music. So JMU Creative is basically me saying, I'm going to take all these skill sets and apply them to this umbrella, which is a creative agency. So now, and a lot of it came from my accountant being like, your taxes are so messed up. There's money coming in from so many different areas that it just doesn't make sense. Like, he's like, you drove 10,000 miles this year for just by yourself for gigs. Like, you need to put that in some sort of like organized format so that you can benefit from this in some capacity. So at the end of that, I kind of go, you know what, all of the things I do, the photography gigs that I get, the people hiring me to run their social media, the session gigs that I get, all of this sort of falls under this umbrella and allows me to have it all in one sort of place. So it was, there was a reason to do it, but it also felt like a good time to go, hey, I do an awful lot of stuff and I've had a lot of experience doing things in the creative sphere. Let's tighten that up and put a bow on it and have it benefit me in some capacity. And that's sort of how it lived. And as soon as I launched it, all my friends were like, finally, dude, like now you can hire this thing here. And it's been really fun. And it's really crazy when somebody's like, my accountant even said to me, he's like, in the government database, you are a president of like a company. And I was like, that's so weird. But it is. I mean, not saying it's like a huge, money monetary thing, but it's still my thing, and it's based on just you. Like I said, you never know where these skill sets are going to come into play, and I've always taken crazy photos of my drums and stuff like that, and I actually get more photography work than I do drum gigs sometimes, which is pretty cool. And it just all, like I said, all of it had to do with this thing that I love. I didn't want to post pictures of anything else. I just want to take pictures of these circles and put them in weird locations and stuff like that. So if you were to ask me when I was 12, if that was my career path or my goal path, I'd say, I would have never even be able to put that on paper.
That explains so much, because I remember my first, I guess, interaction with you was this really cool photo of like a top-down shot of the drums. And I was just thinking, that's so artistic, but I left it at that. I was like, oh, okay, all right, it's just an artistic shot of the drums. And then when I saw more and more pop up, and then I started to dig deeper, I'm like, oh, okay, he is a photographer. So that makes sense as to why he's coming up with these awesome photos. I just thought it was like, just a random snap here and there, but yeah.
The interesting thing is, a lot of people who follow me aren't even like, they're not fans of drums. They just like the aesthetic of the photos that I take. So when I ask people, like, when people ask me like, well, how do you market yourself? And like, how do you think outside the box? When the social media is filled with people filming themselves drumming and doing videos of what kind of chops they can do online. I very infrequently put any pictures of me playing or videos of me playing, not because I'm embarrassed by it, but just, to me, that's not exciting, to see me playing really rudimentary beats in the studio for a song that I can't actually put in the clip because it's unreleased, kind of thing. So I said, marketing is about being memorable to people. That's how. So if you want to stay busy, you always need to be at the forefront of people's minds. Okay, how do you get to do that? And I usually say, like, well, you need to be the person that anytime, if your goal is to get hired for a gig, you don't know who is going to be the person that's going to get you the gig. It could be the artist himself, or it could be the aunt of the artist whose neighbor son knows of your pictures, and it trickles up to the artist, and that's how you got the gig, because your name was passed that way. Well, in order to get to that kid who's seen you, you need to be doing things that maybe that person's interested in, or something that got that person's eye. And so a lot of times people are like, okay, so where would you market yourself? And it's like, well, imagine this. Imagine I had one time a PR company ask me, like, oh, if we want to help you out, do we want to get you a Modern Drummer drum magazine? We'll try to get you on all these drum publications. I was like, that's awesome. I would love that. But drummers read drum magazines. The artist that I want to work with is not usually picking up Modern Drummer. And so the people reading that magazine are not calling you to give you the gig that you want. But what happens if you market me? What happens if somebody does an article on me in Home and Garden magazine? It's like, why would you want to be in Home and Garden magazine? Because now you have this whole new audience that doesn't read drum magazines. They read Home and Garden magazines, and they're flipping through and they go, why is there a story about a drummer in Home and Garden magazine? I'm going to read this. This is weird. And they read it. Oh, is it successful? You know what? My neighbor down the street is a musician, and they're always talking about having trouble finding a drummer. I'm going to show them this magazine, kind of thing. Now, all of a sudden, that person who would have never picked up Modern Drummer magazine now knows about you. You're the only drummer that they've ever read about in Modern Home and Garden magazine. There you go. That's how you market to an audience that would have never expected you to show up in their life, kind of thing. That's sort of what photography has done for me. It has opened up the world, because now people are sharing my photos that have nothing to do with drums. Now it's like coffee companies are sharing my photos because they really like the steampunk, coffee machine that I made that was like surrounded by drums. Some watch companies hit me up wanting to make that watch that I designed, kind of thing. And it's like, okay, now it's opening up a world that I wouldn't necessarily have thought to get in there. Now, obviously, I use Home and Garden as just an example of something that's very far right field, something that comes out of nowhere. So, and that's how you think outside the box. That's why when people go, well, the Instagram algorithm only likes videos, it doesn't like static images, so you're not going to get as much attention. I get far more attention from my static images than any reel that I put out there. So, whatever Google is telling you is the case doesn't always apply.
Yeah, that is very true. I guess at the end of the day, you hear it often here and there. It's about having good content or eye-catching content, not so much anything else. Like, if it's good, it's going to get shared around. People are going to come across it.
Yeah, not many. When I post a video of me playing the drums, people may like it. They have no reason to share it because it doesn't make sense to share, but they'll share a beautiful photo.
Yeah.
Something cool, a handbag that looks like it was made from a drum, like, because that's a little bit different. You just have to think outside the box sometimes. And I
Yeah.
think people just, there's, that's how, I mean, like you said, it's like, how many degrees of separation? I mean, the world, the Instagram and social media has brought this world really, really close together. And just to, I get people from all over the world that hit me up and go, that know about me. Like, it's weird to go somewhere in a city that I don't frequent very often and actually have people recognize you, and it's like, I'm not like a public figure, but there are drummers and there are people who, I always ask, where did you, hi, how's it going? It's like, oh, somebody shared a picture that I really liked, and I had to follow your account, and I just, there's something very like therapeutic about the photos that you take, and it's like, I'm like in the middle of the country, or overseas or something like that. So it's cool. It's really, really cool. But that's kind of the stuff that I try to instill in these kids. Like, when they go out into the world and they start to think about how to brand themselves, it's like, well, let's see what makes you unique and stick with it. One of the things that that I find troubling is how quickly that the younger generation conforms to whatever is like, they conform, and they try to mimic what is going on with out there, in hopes to like get up on the bandwagon of what's
Yeah.
cool. And it's like, well, that's the exact wrong way to get noticed, because now everybody's feed is oversaturated with the same thing. So how do you set yourself apart? What makes you unique? And that's where we like to sit down and be like, well, tell me something about yourself. I met with a student the other day who's a great drummer. And they loved hiking and being in the woods. So it was travel and drums. And it's like, okay, how do we document those things? How do we follow your story about these beautiful places that you're visiting, but also incorporate the drums into that story? And we sat and we came up with a game plan, and they're going off to Costa Rica for two months. And it's like, they're like, well, I can't bring my drum set into the woods. Like, no, but you could, let's see, get the sounds of the rainforest that you're in, and maybe bring a little drum and let raindrops fall on it and hear the difference. It's like, I don't know, I'm not
Mm.
the answers, but that's what you need to be thinking about. Okay, I'm going on this trip, I'm going to see amazing things, but I'm a drummer and I really want a successful drum career. Okay, let's merge those two worlds. Let's figure out how we can make something cool with that. Came up with a game plan. I think they're off traveling the world, and I'm excited to see what they kind of come up with. And that's, sometimes if you don't think like that, you just need people to say, okay, what's going to set you apart from the 12 other people who like to travel and also like drums, or the
Yeah.
100,000 people who want to do that. So, but yeah, it took you to find one overhead photo of mine to then go, I want to see what else is going on. Oh, I mean, I love when I speak with someone who kind of does a little bit of a deep dive into the background. Like you said, can we talk about JMU Creative? Can we talk about this stuff? I don't really talk about JMU Creative on my page that much. It kind of says it at the top, but you went and did your due diligence and your research, and that's the exciting part. That's the part that really, like, this podcast I'm doing with you is very memorable already, because it's someone who went and said, well, let me learn about this person a little bit, and that's going to make our conversation that much more robust.
one thing I wanted to add is the trending thing. I don't want to go too far back in the conversation, but I think it's worth pointing out that, I mean, even as kids, when we were in kindergarten or whatever, if a kid had something cool, like if he brought, I don't know, a cool toy to school or whatever, how I know for myself, I was like, oh, I want that. And then I would beg my parents to get me this thing. And then before you know it, everyone has it. I think it's human nature to want to follow the trend, whether it's for the deeper uh, desire to fit in or to have success. So that takes me to my question of how how do you, I mean, you were about to touch on it as well, but as a drummer, how can we be unique or creative? And is forcing being unique in any way inauthentic?
I mean, that's a great question. I think that applies to life in general,
Mhm.
in not just, at trying to market yourself in this industry. I think that it's a scary thing for people to think about, what makes it, how can you promote, how can I promote myself, what makes me unique, you know over somebody else. I hate taking pictures of myself. I hate showing myself in pictures or videos. I'd rather just have it focus in other areas, and that's how I sort of set myself apart. That I took the subject matter and really highlighted that. I think setting yourself apart or I don't think it's a bad thing to see what's going on in the industry and embrace that. Also follow along those same guidelines of what's cool, what's in right now, what's trending. I think the piece is, rather than going quick, you go online and you see somebody like me, you take a overhead shot of the drums, and then you run to your practice space, you set your camera up, and you shoot a picture down of the overhead side of the drums. And it's like, I'm glad that was an inspiration for you,
Mhm.
but how about you go, okay, I like this. I like this visual. I like looking down at the drums, seeing what's on the floor. How do I do it different than Jonathan, so that it's more my style and aesthetic? And I think, like we talk about, nobody wants to think. They just act. They go, that's cool. I'm going to follow that. I want
Yeah.
that. That's what I'm going to do. He has that. It's cool. I'm going to go over there. That's where I think it really takes a moment for you to go, okay, I don't need to do this right now. I'm going to go take a picture of my overhead drums. I'll tell you how many times this happens. Somebody sends me a picture on Instagram and go, hey man, you really inspired me. Somebody just literally did it. Somebody in Brazil just did it to me. They go, a lot of your pictures really inspired me. I was like, no way, show me. They sent me the picture that I had taken, and then they sent me the picture that they had taken. Very similar in the idea, but they kind of did it in their own, aesthetic a little bit. I have a certain aesthetic that I like to use. They did it in their own aesthetic. They took the idea, the concept. I think it was a picture of when I like to break apart all of the equipment. So it's like everything is, well, that's because I'm like a neurotic person, and I like to see things in rows and everything is even and symmetrical. But that's another psychological part that we don't have to go to. But they did that, and I thought it was beautiful. And then I like to say to them, okay, you know what would be really cool on the next one that you do, da, 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 and then try that. And then it becomes their sort of interpretation. I am not like writing the book on these things. These are all of the photos that I take, all of the imagery, all of the ideas or concepts are pulled from things that I find appealing, things that I like, things that I think are really cool and really creative. And this is my interpretation of them. I never say, this is my idea. Never, no, nobody's ever come up with this before. Same thing with music. You tell me that you came up with something in music that's never been heard before. I'm gonna debate you to that until the bitter end. Somebody somewhere has also come up with that idea. The samples, the riffs. People are in hip hop songs. I work on a lot of hip hop records. We're still using samples from the 70s because it's not saying you can't come up with that, but there's like something iconic about that sound and what they did back then.
Yeah.
And like, well, that was the sound. They came up with it. No, they pulled from somebody 50 years ago that they really liked, kind of thing. I am blown away when I hear a song that like Jay-Z or a producer used on a record, and then somebody goes, "Do you know where this song came from?" And it's from like a song from the 1910s. It sounds way different, and they pulled and they ripped a little thing from it, but it's not, it's their interpretation, it's their version of something, especially with music. Music has been passed down for so many years.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing new, but if you take a picture of a drum set, if I take a picture of a drum set, or if I come up with a cool watch design and somebody else goes, I did a watch too, and it's got the similar stuff. It's like, did you do that because you like my watch and you wanted to do the same watch? It's like, or did you put your own spin on what you found and what your vision of what that watch could be is. And I think I really appreciate the people who take that time to go, okay, I'm not going to just, copy what Jonathan did. I'm going to show him my version of what it is. And sometimes people send me things and I go, this is beautiful. And I go think to myself, how the fuck didn't I come up with that idea? You know what I mean? Like, but it took them to get inspired. They came up with something. I saw that and I go, you know what? I have something else I think would be cool. And then it's like a boom, boom, boom. We're all inspiring each other. And that's the way it should be. So I don't think following trends, I don't think mimicking to an extent is a bad thing. I think everything should be some kind of inspiration for what you want to put out there creatively, whether it's a style of playing or a visual thing. I think we're all inspired. It's just a matter of whether you just straight rip it because you don't want to take the time to figure out something on your own, or you really make it your own interpretation.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you're going to be ripping off things, then you're probably looking at any form of art with the wrong reason.
Yeah. So I do feel like it's tricky with the advent of social media and how much content is out there. It's hard to set yourself apart or be an individual. But there's also, you can look at it from the side where there's a lot more stuff out there that you may not have been privy to in the first place.
Yeah, definitely. Could we go into the Whisper Breaks Volume
Yes.
1? So that's all. Is that all your drumming in there?
Yes. Yep. Well, so it's all my drumming. It's then, it's unprocessed. It's the producer ripped and mixed down these breaks, and then he produced songs from the beats that we came up with. But it's like, it's little loops and sounds and one hits and one shots of these very unique sounds that we were coming up with in this concept of doing it in a whisper room with one mic. So nothing is like processed. It is the sounds that we were getting, but he basically put me in a room and have his coffee and play on his phone, and he's like, just play.
Oh wow.
And I play different. He just hit record, and then we would go through and he's like, what you did here is really cool. Let's rip that. I love this sound that we got right here. Let's do that. And at the end of it, I think we had like 80 to like 85 loops. Some beats when I listen back now, I'm like, how did I even come up with that? Like, not that it's like complicated. It's just like, what a weird pattern. And it would have come from, me kind of banging around and kind of like, when you're messing around on the drums and kind of like not thinking, you're like, okay, I'm getting ready, but hitting things, doing a little something, but you're just trying to get warmed up kind of thing. He was like, those are the things that I tend to pull my recordings from. A lot of times on sessions with him, the drum take that he uses is the one that I wasn't even supposed to be playing to the song, because you're not thinking, you're just acting, you're just doing it. So a lot of those, I was like, I don't remember doing that. He's like, honestly, I recorded that and I pulled that from when you were like trying to like get comfortable on the drum set. You were doing something. He's like, and you'll never do that beat again, because you were, that mindset is a very rare mindset. This sort of like adjusting the cymbal, kind of getting it. Does this feel good? Okay, tell me when you're going to hit record. And he's like, I've been recording for minutes now, buddy. So a lot of those drum patterns, I'm like, that was crazy. What a weird one. Or he'll catch the loop on beat 2 to 12. So it's not even the hit on 1 on the hi-hat. With this, it's like the hit on 3. So it sounds like the beat's coming in at a weird time, which throws off the progression of the whole timing structure. So it was super cool. And we got to use some of the wacky instruments that I made with my brother.
That is crazy, just the perspective shift. First of all, you have the difference in perspective from you yourself playing, and then you have the producer perspective. And then going into it deeper is simply just where the beat starts can transform that one groove into something completely different.
Yeah, 100%. And he's, what he always said about this Whisper Breaks practice, the reason we started it is because, and he's a wonderfully talented producer. His name is The Archetype. And he's also in my band, my hip hop band, but he produces, we work hand in hand on hundreds and hundreds of records. He is like, I need to make a sounds that I don't have access to. I'm not getting the sounds in the, inside I'm not getting the sounds I want from all the sample packs that are available out there. I want you to go make those sounds for me so that I can use them on records. And when we got started, it was like, I don't know if you saw that I do like custom drum equipment with my brother, and we like chop up cymbals and drums. So I made that and I brought it to him, and he's like, let's record that. And give me something. I want that, because you know what? That's not something that he'll ever be able to find, because it's a handmade thing. So he's like, we did it, we recorded, and he goes, okay, I need you to go do more of that with your brother. So I do more. I bring it in, and he's like, keep bringing in these things. And like, that just turned into, bring all this stuff, bring all your saw blades, bring all your wacky chains and metal and rusty stuff and things that are going to give you tetanus, if and put it in this room, and I'm going to sit there and record you and just play beats. And he did that, and he pulled it, and he's like, so yes, it was cool that we made it to sell, but like, in all honesty, he wanted to have a sort of a database of sounds that were unique to his producing style. So he's like, I don't want to sit in the computer and take a snare and then add all this distortion and reverb and all this stuff to make it sound like it has a rusty chain on it. Can you just bring me the rusty chain and put it on your snare and hit it, and then I can have that sound? And so we did that over the course of like a year, and he just grabbed little clips. And then it was funny because we would go in the studio, and I'd be like, oh, let's make a little beat using it. And then we'd post a little clip, and then we get all these, like, some of the artists we worked with sending us messages like, what's that beat? Where'd you get that? What is that? I was like, oh, this new beats pack. He goes, don't take that down off the internet. I'm taking that beat. And so
Wow.
a lot of people had it on their songs before the beat pack even like got released, and now we can say where those sounds came from.
Wow, that is crazy. So it's not frustrating. It's annoying enough having to lug a drum kit around, and now you're lugging a workshop around too.
It was, I gotta tell you, like that experience of making that beat pack wasn't arduous. It was just, it took a long time because, you know, me and my brother had to make the stuff, and then we'd have to get into the studio and then sort of work it in there. But I think the next one, it's going to be really fun because kind of understand how the process works and make these unique things. It's really, that's again, it's like, this is kind of going back to what we talked about. It's like, there's thousands of beat packs out there. Everybody's got a beat pack. He goes in the system and he produces songs. And he uses the friggin' like Nate Smith ones because, you know, of course it sounds perfect and it's awesome. And he's like, but I don't want it to sound perfect and awesome. I want to do this differently. I don't want, he goes, he brings me in and he's like, all right, we got to have you record these on the drums. This is the samples that I'm using. And I'm like, dude, those samples are insane. He's like, yeah, because they were recorded in a studio with 150 mics on the kit and it sounds gorgeous. And I'm like, yeah, so what do you need me for? He's like, because I don't want it to sound like that. I want it to sound imperfect, and I want your imperfect playing on it. I want your human side of this to sound like music was supposed to be sounded, made by humans. And so we made a beat pack that was a breakbeats kit with one Neumann mic sitting in the front in a tiny room in which I had to literally I had to go into the room and then he had to bring the drums in and block me in. There's no room to get around. And it was 150 degrees in there. And he was like, just play. And he's like, you know what? He had a box of like blueberry cereal. And he's like, use this and shake this and make this a snare drum. And it's like, now he has the sounds that he wants. And then he's like, I guess we should, in other, when you're in the producer community, you have other producers. And he was starting to get hit up by some producers who were like, yo, man, can I get those? Where do you get those sounds? And he's like, oh, I'll give them to you. And more people were using this sort of lo-fi, crunchy, raw thing. And now we have a beat pack. And I'm not saying that it's unique that we have a beat pack. I'm saying it's unique in the fact that I know nobody in the world has a sound that is exactly like this, because that was made from a cymbal that I own with my brother that was chopped up and conformed together, and we recorded it in a whisper room with one mic. So you're going to have to do a lot of work to, redo that sound. So is it one of a kind? In a sense, kind of, but that's thinking outside the box. It's not, I'm going to do a beat pack as nobody's thought about doing a beat pack. It's pack. What would be different about the beat pack that I make? Let's sit down. And we started that like 3 years ago. Like it just got released now. There was no timetable on it. If somebody said, you're going to do this now and you're not going to release it for 3 years. If somebody told me that, I'd be like, 3 years? I got to wait for this to release. But there was no timetable. So it was like, okay. So we were still tweaking it, a couple years in. And then finally he's like, okay, I think we should release this. It's done. Now we made some artwork for it and then released it. And it was like, cool. Then we did it and it came out and it was awesome. Now I've moved on to, the next thing. And I hope sometime down the line, Pharrell uses it on one of his tracks, and that would be really cool. But I'm not going to put a 4-year plan on Pharrell using it. It's going to end up being, 11 years down the road. I'm at CVS, or let me think of a place. I'm at Target. That I don't know if you guys have CVS there. I'm at Target I'm walking through the aisle looking for like new socks. Pharrell's there. I'm like, yo, Pharrell, what's going on? I'm Jonathan Ulman. I did this really crazy beat pack. Do you want to use it? I'll send it to you right now. Send it to on phone. Next thing he does a song with Timbaland and Jay-Z, and that becomes I don't know how that's gonna happen with Pharrell. I just gonna keep doing my thing and hope that somehow those roads converge and I get to tell Pharrell about my beat pack. Maybe Pharrell listens to this podcast. Who the hell knows, you know?
Hopefully.
But I'm saying you can't, you do things, you do them, you put them out there, and you move on and you keep moving and you keep moving. And sometime down the line, maybe this thing you did years ago gets used. Do you ever see those stories where it's like, where some artist or someone blows up, they become super famous and they get their big break, and it's because somebody found their random record in a used, record store, thought it was great. It was recorded 30 years prior, and like they had a connection, they played it, somebody heard it, boom, this guy who quit music 20 years ago to work as a like a roofer is now getting his opportunity that he didn't think was ever going to happen. You don't know how it's going to play out. You just got to keep doing it, kind of keep moving along with it. And I think that's the part that's the to a lot of this, the younger generation, like, oh, it's going to take too long. That's what my 7-year-old daughter says. Oh, it's going to take forever. Like, can you put your dish in the sink? Oh my God, it's so far away. Like, so I get it, but so it takes the fun out of it when you have, timetables, because damn, it's going to be so cool when I least expect Pharrell to use my song or our feedback,
And that's exactly right. There's two things there that I want to point out. It's like becoming an overnight success in 10 years, for example. I don't know if you've heard of that saying.
Do one more time.
So the quote is, I became an overnight success in 10 years.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Like
yeah, it's a good one. But all that what you were talking about just then over the last 2 to 5 minutes ties right back in to goals and enjoying the process. Is you never know. Like, that's why you need to just concern yourself with the process, focus on developing yourself, and then you just don't know what could happen over time.
it's really, really funny. I got nominated for Best New Drummer in the World by Rhythm Magazine in 2016. I was 36 at the time.
Yeah.
It was a cool nomination, but like, Best New Drummer, I've been doing it for 20 years at that point, Same thing with Nate Smith. People were like, where did Nate Smith come from? He's like a famous jazz guy from New York for decades.
Yeah.
So happens. Oh my God. I have the best story. Do you remember Kings of Leon?
Yep.
They put out that record. Sorry. They put out that record that had like Sex on Fire and all that stuff. And I remember they were playing a gig. They were huge, doing arenas. And they were playing at Boston University, sold out, 10,000 people in the crowd. And they're like, thanks for making this record such a big success. Sex on Fire is the #1 song in the world right now. Yeah, we did that, all that thing. They're up there and they're like, and thanks to all like the artists all the fans out there who think this is our first like record. Everyone's like, what? Like, they've been doing that for like 25 years, 20 years leading up there. Some of their older records are significantly better than that record that took them to superstardom or whatever. And it was like, it's like, that's how it works. People people, you're not an overnight success. If you're a true overnight success, I really don't even think there are like really true overnight successes anymore.
Nah,
Which
I
is
don't think
fine,
so.
which is
Yeah.
good, because somebody that's a nobody and then is a somebody the next day to the world, oftentimes like they've been doing it for a long time. It just so happened that they got their moment, which is great, but it's not like it's fun to learn about the history behind, you know, that and how hard they worked in the background before anybody knew who they were. And that's time. And that's why I tell those students, tell my students, it's like, you don't know when your opportunity is going to come. So you better be ready for it when it comes. You can't say, okay, now I'm going to practice because I got the opportunity. It's like, you play every gig, you learn from every gig, you learn from every studio session, you learn from practicing, you continually to work on this so that when you get that call, you can nail it and feel confident when it's time to go. I think I'm still waiting for that call. I'm still waiting for I'm gonna just keep saying Pharrell because I'm gonna put that out in the world so that maybe it works. But Pharrell calls me and says, "Hey, heard about you. I want to do a record with you. Can you come in the studio?" I'm ready.
Yep.
All of those gigs that you never have heard about me playing, the thousands and thousands of times I've been in the studio, the work I've done, everything leading up to that point was practice for me to be able to go in the studio and be like, "What do you need? Let's do this." I'm not going to say I'm not going to geek out in the studio, but I'll be able to get on the drums and be like, "What do you need? I got it."
Yeah.
And that's it. So that's the piece that's really important, is you need to put in this work no matter, as if, I don't know what there's got to be a saying, but it's like, what, every gig is the biggest gig, in the world,
Yeah.
because it's as if that was the opportunity that's going to catapult you to the next part of your career. You don't know who's in the audience. You don't know who's going to hear the record that you worked on. You don't know who is lit. I mean, what was that? There's some crazy story about Post Malone before he was like big. He had been walking through like a rehearsal space and somebody had just been like messing around with some like beats, in their practice space, and he heard it, and I mean, this could all be myth, could not have ever happened that way, but it's exactly how it would happen in a situation like that. Somebody walks by, you're messing around on your, MPC or your pad, you're making a beat in the space, and somebody walks by and hears that, and that's it. That the rest is history after that. So there is no bad gig. Well, there is bad gigs. I've certainly been a part of them. There's no gig that you can't pull something from, to learn from, to grow from, to work on for the next time.
Yeah. Agree. I think that there's a saying / a formula that encompasses all that you said. It's like prior preparation plus opportunity equals it might be success or something like that. And that's exactly what you're saying, is being prepared for anything that comes your way. And then with that preparation, that's what really gets you there.
My worst fear I'll be very, very upfront, but like that, playing that Seth Meyers thing, that was a very stressful thing. It was a very, I was, not that I wasn't prepared, but it was an atmosphere, an experience that I was very unfamiliar with. And you were kind of thrown in to a situation that's really high stress and high sort of anxiety, and things move very quickly, and it's a world that you're very unfamiliar with, and you really don't have a lot of time to get it or understand it. I mean, you start on Monday, by Thursday, you kind of understand at least what's going on to an extent. But the guys that are in the band, that's their 3,000th show doing it. Nothing phases them whatsoever. They get it. They know where to look. They know what to listen to. They know when they can take a breather. They know when they can do this. When I was doing it, it was like, what the fuck is happening right now? This is crazy. My heart was racing. The only thing that I had, I'm not saying that I play, I think I played good. I think I got through it. I had friends who watched it. They were like, yeah, sounded like you were in the band and you did your thing. Not saying that there was no clams. I didn't sort of like, mess up or catastrophic. They didn't have to run songs back again. But what that was me going there with no understanding of how it was supposed to happen. The only thing I had control of was, I know how to play the drums in a high profile situation. So I'm going to rely on that piece and just trust my abilities that I can play these songs that we learned like an hour ago, and do it, listen to what's in my head as to what's going on. It's nothing like you practice because it's live TV, pre-recorded live TV, but like anything can happen. You got a guy in your ear saying, there's some delays, keep playing, we're going to go back to the chorus, go back to this, and a hard stop now kind of thing. It's like playing drums to instruction, which is really something that's hard to do. As a drummer, you want a natural, like, hey, we're coming to a stop, doom, doom, they don't do that. They want a hard stop. So you're playing, if the guy says stop now, you need to get out of the song. Like a wacka wacka boom. That is a hard thing to do when you've been playing drums the same way for 30 years. Now all of a sudden you can't think like that. You need to think, how do I stop a song on 3, and make it sound natural? It was a very difficult. I remember you'd play, and when it was done and they were like, okay, that's a wrap, thanks everyone. And I would be like shaking, like, what happened? Did I mess anything? What, and it was like, I played, and the only thing that I knew was trust my abilities to play the drums. And all of those times being in gigs that were unpredictable, that things went wrong, that issues came up, that things happened and changed, that equipment broke, that the person was in the wrong spot, that the singer stopped singing, the guitars played, the electricity went out, everything that I've been thrown at leading up to that point, I knew how to navigate that and make it still sound natural, still look, and nobody stopping, everybody just doing what they needed to do to finish off the song. I would have never been able to do that gig if I didn't have all sorts of things go wrong. So when you think back 10 years prior, 5 years prior, when shit hit the fan at a gig and you're like, that sucked, dude. That was like the worst gig ever, but we made it through. But we made it through is going to come in very handy for, but we made it through on live actual TV in 10 years kind of thing.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, if that
100%.
stuff didn't happen, if I was just playing drums in my rehearsal space for my whole life and never had any issues, I don't think I could have gotten through that. I got through it because, I mean, I don't know, even if you watch it, it's like, I like cringe, but it was like, even when Seth was like introducing me, like, I was like, I didn't even know where to look. Like, I was like, a deer in headlights. I was like, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I was like, what's going to happen? I was just getting ready for the next song, to be ready for that kind of thing. So, yeah, I don't know that I'm meant for live national TV, that kind of spotlight, but I know that I can get through tricky situations, and that's an unteachable thing.
Yes.
If I was a teacher in a classroom, and I guess if I had a student, I was like, okay, we're going to play this song. Now I'm going to kick over your cymbal stand. Now I'm gonna throw things at you. I'm going to, rip your plugs out of your in-ears, and you need to keep playing. I guess that would be a cool, like, I guess maybe I just thought about a really great class to teach at Berkeley of the like how to deal with the unknown while you're playing a gig kind of thing. Because you need that stuff to happen in order for you to understand what needs to happen in an instant.
Yeah. It's the experience of the live setting plus all that prior prep of you're developing your drumming over the years, which allows you to manage the things that come up at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why that's why being an overnight success, a real overnight success, is probably more detrimental than anything else because you have no preparation. That's why if some kid wants to be in an arena, by the next weekend, hey, yeah, I think that's great, but man, you got no background on how to navigate what happens in an arena.
Yeah.
You don't know how to when your body tenses up and you're in front of 85,000 people and your body tenses up and you're like stressed out and nervous. It's like, do you know how to talk yourself out of that while still playing a song? Do you know how to relax your body? Do you know how to deal with situations at a very high level when people are spending hundreds and hundreds and thousands of dollars on a ticket and expect the show to go flawlessly? Do you know how to navigate that? Probably not. But you would when you had to navigate it at Joe's Pub and you're playing for 3 people and somebody spilled a beer on the PA and everything like caught fire, but you managed to fix it, get back on your kit and do it again without anybody being none the wiser to it. I think that's the training that is helpful, not the fact that you played for 3 people at Joe's Pub and the PA caught fire. You know what I mean?
Right. 100%.
That's sort of like the difficult aspect to explaining that to somebody who basically only hears, what are you saying? I'm not going to play any arenas? But I think that's a good way to look at life. Really, is everything is you learn from your experiences, you learn from decisions that you've made, and you try to do better on the next one. I mean, that's part of being growing up. I try to instill that in my daughter, and I made a lot of poor decisions, but I certainly know what not to do next time. And whether it's musical or in career or life and, relationships and stuff like that, it's all learning to be ready for the next thing that comes and trying to do it the most, the best way on the next one.
I'd love to dig into like your drumming specifically. I've watched as much material as I could find, and I absolutely love your drumming. The way you move with, the music and your drumming itself, like you do this sort of head swaying thing with the beat. You've got these real cool cymbal accents in the video I was watching. I think I wrote down the song name. There was a song called Waves, and then your solo. I don't know if it was the band or the song, but Boston Calling.
Oh yeah, so that was
read my writing.
Yeah. No, that's okay. That's a big festival in Boston. The band is Still Gold, so that was like a breakdown section in one of our songs.
Yeah. And your kick, I don't know what it is. Something kept drawing me to your footwork. It's just so tight. I can't work it out. It's just perfect.
Thank
So,
you.
no worries. So, what was I know you're self-taught from what I've read, but what was your development process from picking up the sticks in the first place?
Oh, I love that question. I'll speed through the first part. Basically, I started with piano,
Mhm.
and it didn't wasn't the right instrument. I did not have a connection to it to the point of um my teacher, I believe at the time, was kind of like, this doesn't feel like the right thing, and maybe I think recommended maybe drums. Maybe it was like a movement that I couldn't sort of like get into, or for whatever reason. So I got the drums. I got actually funny, as a neighbor had a snare drum, a stand, a cymbal, and that was it. So my
Mhm.
dad made me two drumsticks, different sizes, hacked them together, and then my got a dowel, and my brother sat next to me with the cymbal, and I kind of played patterns with my hands. There was an immediate connection. Like I said, not diving into the psychological piece to this, but there was a connection to patterns, symmetry, things that are cyclical. That hit me right away.
Yeah.
So moving on, got more familiar with it, started working, got a drum set. Now I'm about 11 years old, 11 or 12. What got me into my style of playing is hip hop. My
Yeah.
brother was really big into hip hop of the late 80s, early 90s. And I would go into his room, and I would take his cassettes, I would go into my room, and I would put them on, and I would try playing to them. And to this day, no matter what, when somebody asks, how do I get my kid to play drums? What's the best process to do this? They're learning, but I say, have them play hip hop, play to hip hop records. The reason is, when you were a kid, or you're just learning to try something new, the amount of people that will quit something is based on how, like, somebody says, but it's basically the success. If you don't see success or immediate gratification or see progress in what you're doing, you quit. This isn't
Yeah.
working. I'm done. Especially in kids, I'm not doing it. When you see little bits of progress, you go, okay, I'm getting better. This is good. Hip hop beats, and some of the ones I'm talking about, those beats don't change. So when you're playing along to a song, say you're like, I want to play to Enter Sandman, I want to play to this song, and you're just getting started, and you're like, okay, I'm getting this. Okay, well, the song changed, so now I need to get to this other part. Okay, now the song is going back to this other part. Oh crap, and it's a train wreck
Hmm.
trying to figure that out, because you're still trying to understand what's happening with your limbs and all this independence. Well, hip hop is like, okay, I'm going to start. It's going to be a train wreck. But if I keep at it, I can always come back. This beat has not changed. And by the end of the song, you're playing along to this friggin' song, whether or not you're like listening to the lyrics or anything like that, you're playing. So that immediate gratification of me going, wow, I was playing along to an artist who was singing, and I was matching those drums. That is key. So you can start bad, but if you keep going at it, somewhere in the middle, you go, I'm getting it. I'm getting it. And
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
worry about, there's a chorus coming up, there's a bridge section, there's a second verse. You don't have to run, and you don't even have to worry about hitting anything other than kick, snare, and hi-hat.
Yeah.
So that to me was pivotal. Every bit of the most important part of my drumming career was learning to play the beats to hip hop records from back then. So moving forward now to my career, I'm great in the studio because my timing is is spot on. I understand being in the pocket. I understand that the beat doesn't need to change in order to be a great song. And I play what's good for the song. I don't do a lot. If I do a fill, it's very thoughtful, it's tasteful, it's in and out. I am exactly what a producer wants to work with. I'm exactly what an engineer wants to work with. They do not want to go back and clean up your wacky drum fills or your inability to stay on the click. But I didn't know that back then. But playing those hip hop records, being tight with those grooves, essentially made me a really great pocket drummer with good time and good feel. So that makes me a good studio drummer. I'm not a flashy drummer. So those big pop gigs in which there's fire shooting out of your drums and you want my tongue out and my stick to be twirling and you want my drums to go upside down and you want to leave the stage and I drum solo for 14 minutes, not going to happen. I'm not going to be your drummer. That's fine. I live in the studio world and do what I need to do. Now, going back to that time period, that really helped with limb independence and understanding staying, in something and playing what works with the song. That song is on a record. That record's really successful. That drummer didn't do anything crazy, just did this beat. Oh, as a kid, you start to go, I don't need to do too much things. My favorite line ever is that Steve Gadd line, fills get the thrills, grooves pay the bills. Greatest line ever. It's 100% accurate. We had Steve Jordan at Berkeley.
Yeah, of course I know Steve Jordan. One of my favorite drummers.
Yeah, the best. So he comes in, and I love this story. Students are watching, and most students didn't even know who the heck he was, because that is fine, kind of thing. So he comes in and he's doing like a clinic or master class. He's like, okay, I'm gonna play a beat and I want volunteers to come up and play that beat. And I was like, oh, this is crazy. I'm standing on the side, like we brought Steve Jordan in. This is great. He goes, I'm gonna play this beat. He's like, boot, cat, boot, cat, boot, cat, boot, cat. Beat it. Michael Jackson. I was like, wow. I mean, even when he plays it and I play it, same beat, it's like, there's no question who's got more like feel in the parts, just the way he hits the hi-hat, everything. So he's like, that's the beat. And you got all these kids and they're like, man, whatever, that's boring kind of thing. It's like, this is one of the most iconic beats in the history of music. Brings up a person, brings up a kid. All right, can you play that beat? Yes. Okay, go ahead. So, he stopped. No, that wasn't the beat. What do you mean? Don't do the da. Just do a keep it solid right there. Okay, go again. Every could not play what that beat was. There was this need to change it and do something different and show you that I can give a little nuance here. And it's like, but that's not what the producer wanted you to do on the song. They want this beat. That's not what Michael Jackson wants you to do. He wants you to play this beat this way exactly. Otherwise, you do not get the gig. That's the difference, is all in the world that we live in, the visuals, the stick twirling, the drum fill on top of a drum fill on top of a drum fill is great for this application. In the studio, they don't want to see none of that nonsense. Do you know how many records I have made in which we've literally recorded me playing the hi-hat, I stop, I go in, and I take a mallet on the floor, and I hit the bass drum in this pattern, and then I come back and I hit the snare. Does that make me not a good drummer? No, that makes me what they wanted for that song. They wanted it done this way. and that's what you do. And you can't have the mindset that you're going to give them something that they couldn't have never even thought of, like it's not going to happen. So there's a very distinct, diversity variation between the live playing and the studio playing. And a lot of my success comes from the fact that I learned playing hip hop records back then. And that really was the sort of catalyst for where my career came. So to kind of go back to your question and where you saw me playing and where I'm grooving and like moving my body, like I can't stop moving. I think my foot has been shaking this entire podcast. There's a constant tapping, doing something, and being on the drums. I kind of get into that sway, that sort of rhythm. And hip hop, I love hip hop. Hip hop is my life, my world. The only band that I'm official member of is a hip hop band. There's a reason why the audience is doing this and I'm doing that too. And the people on the stage are doing that because that's where that song lives, in that pocket, that groove. So I think if I was playing stiff and wasn't moving, then I feel like that's gonna come across in my playing.
Oh yeah, big time. I always come back to this this quote. I don't know if this drummer came up with it himself or if he got it from someone else, but do you know Matt Halpin?
Matt who?
Matt Halpin?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. He said, you're not grooving unless you're moving.
Oh, that's a great one.
Yeah. And that statement has forever stuck with me. So even when I'm practicing, if I don't naturally feel the urge to move, I sort of force it a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how it transforms. I don't know if it's a shift in perception or what, but it definitely feels better when you start to move.
Absolutely. And there is not for nothing, but a lot of the movement of the body and the head helps to find the rhythm of the song and the tempo of the song, where there's a lot of times where if I'm doing like 16th notes on a hi-hat, like your arm starts to get tired, your muscles start to tighten up and you start to feel yourself lagging. A lot of times, if you kind of put your head into it and kind of groove, Nate Smith does that a lot. He kind of like, here's the one, here's the coming on 2 and 4, and your body's moving with that. And it's kind of allowing your whole energy is kind of working together. Whereas if you're trying to do this and sit up straight kind of thing, these are all like mental, the mind game that's going on. Even if if you're not feeling your own pocket, nobody else is going to feel it.
Definitely. I'm sure but watching the videos of you playing, you're doing that. You're leaning into things as well.
Oh yeah, 100%. If I feel like, especially even in the studio, I feel like it's probably a little different. I think I still probably move, but I feel like in the funny thing about the studio, and I have stories about it, but like when I'm playing live and my left foot is going, but I'm not on the not on the hi-hat, or I'm doing something, like a lot of times the producer's like, because everything is mic'd, it's like that's bleeding into this stuff over here. So I feel like you have to be a little more controlled. But live, everything is kind of coming out in the audience. You're feeding off the audience. They're into it. They see you're into it. It's like this full spectrum of vibe that's going on. So I probably have seen myself on video and it's like, yeah, it looks like I'm having a good time.
Yeah. It's frustrating, but I appreciate the difference in the, I guess, let's call it the thinking cap from playing in the studio versus live. Like in the studio, you're obviously under the microscope. So, like you said, any bump of anything, even if you just drop your heel on the hi-hat pedal, that might be heard.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it brings me back to the point you made of how we might be a little bit more stiff in the studio. So I want to ask, in that situation, how do you cope with that?
I feel like I'm not stiff in the studio. I really love being in the studio, so I feel like I'm pretty relaxed. I think you just have to be a little more, aware that like there's times where I'm like humming or making noise with my mouth or like, you know, doing things that I don't think twice about live. And they're like, we can hear that. Can you not do that? So it's like not so much like it's not, I have to be clinical when I'm playing. It's like being a stage actor or a actor in the movies. It's like if you mess up, they can be like, run that one again. Let's get that from a different angle. Say those lines. Can you say it a little differently? Can you try this? And it's like, yeah, sure, no problem. Whereas on stage, it's like you just gotta do it and ad lib and call variables and try different things. And that's all leads to the uniqueness and the the creative element. It's not saying that you're not creative in the studio, but like there's a lot of times where it's like, I have something very specific for this part that I want you to do, so do it like that. So sometimes you feel like you're a little bit of a robot, but it's still playing the drums. It's still, they want that your live human element. They want you to do things, but I think there's a little more specificity to what they're asking you to do. Don't hit the hi-hat so hard. When can we close the hi-hat a little more so it's more of a quick chick 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 sound. So I think it's more like dissecting parts to make it so that it sounds right. I also work a lot on projects in which it's just me and the producer. So it's the song's already there, or the song isn't even written yet, and they want me to just do my drum part. So the days of all of us being in a studio and doing a live take like I used to do doesn't feel like that's so much what's happening in my world anymore. It's more, I go in, I get a list of songs that we're recording. We do 20 songs, I knock them out in 8 hours, and then I'm done. So a lot of times I don't even meet the artist whose track I played on. And that's fine. I learned from recording the days where it's like we're all in a room and everybody says go and you play and everyone goes, did you get it? No, I had a clam on the second verse. Okay, did you get it? Did the drummer get it? Does the drummer like that take? Great. Now everybody overdub on top of that take that the drummer, kind of thing, and even the days of doing it to tape, it was like I come from a mindset of, did that take have a good vibe? Did it feel good? It doesn't matter about the mess ups, or did you miss a drum fill, or did you not hit does the song sound good? Did we feel like that was the best? A lot of my takes on records that I listened to, that wouldn't have been the take that I was hoping they were going to choose, but that was the take that felt the best for the song.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen that anymore. Now it's like, I'll fix it in post. I'll do it in Pro Tools later. Don't worry about it. Just give me some things and I'll fix it later. So, but that's how the industry changed, and nobody has time for you to take, 12 takes per song. I usually get 1 or 2 takes per song.
Yeah.
And that's it. And then they fix whatever needs to be fixed afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but still, at the end of the day, it's still all that prep leading up to these moments that if you weren't prepared, if you weren't ready, it would make all these little adjustments on the day so much harder.
It's like, as a photographer, I learned to do photographs with analog cameras, take the film out, develop it in the darkroom, smell all the chemicals, you know, burn, certain areas of the picture and dodge and do the edits live without seeing how the picture is going to come out. To the time I went to grad school, it was all digital. So it's not saying that that's a bad thing. It's just saying that I'm really glad that I experienced how it worked one way and also worked another way. I doubt my daughter, even kids in this school here, they will never really probably know what it meant to record to tape and understand what it means to have a track in which there probably were flubs and bad hits. I mean, I just listened to a TikTok the other day of Jeff Porcaro talking about recording I Keep Forgetting by Michael McDonald. And he's like, oh yeah, on the going, you can hear when you listen to the end of the second chorus, I did this sort of like double hit on the hi-hat. It's because a stick broke, and in the I was trying to keep the hi-hat going with my foot while I grabbed another stick. And I sat listening to that, like next to my computer with my ears, trying to listen to that part where he messed up. And I'm like, I can't hear it, you jerk. I can't hear up. You can hear a nuance, but like at that's a pretty high level. Michael McDonald, Jeff Porcaro, they could have easily done that take again. They could have said that. He goes, oh, I did it better on the second one. They took the take that had my broken stick thing, and it's because that was the take that felt the best for the song. That I don't think will happen anymore. Moving forward.
Yeah. Everything gets, I mean, not everything, but there's a lot of quantizing happening and all the editing to make it perfect, I suppose, or perfect in someone's eyes.
Yeah. So, but
yeah,
still a creative process. It's just, I just think that people want perfection, and I don't think music was ever meant to be perfect. And this goes a long way to what my producer tells me. He writes a song, he puts a beat to it. I go in there, he plays it for me. He goes, yeah, I want you to play this beat. I was like, why? This sounds freaking insane. Why do you even need me? He goes, I need you because this sounds like a robot and I want you and you're a human. And and I'll merge those two things and it'll sound like, there's a human element to this. And
yeah,
I like that. I like that I'm still needed because I'm not perfect.
I just want to, because I don't know when we're going to get cut off, when you'll have to go or whatnot, but I want to ask two important questions for myself and for, I guess, young drummers, or young in terms of experience. First one is, what are the most important elements of a session drummer? And this will actually, we'll dig into that first, and then we'll go into the second one next.
Sure. I think the most important things are, this sort of goes both live and in studio. I think, one, you need to be technically able to do the gig. That at its baseline, you need to be able to do it. You need to be technically proficient on your instrument. I think the next part is a lot to do with personality. I think you need to be adaptable. You need to be able to adapt on the road. You need to be able to adapt in the studio. You need to be able to make changes, both personality wise and playing wise, to what fits the need of the room, to the players, what's on stage and in the studio. You can't have an ego in the session world. You can have an ego. The problem is, if you're a session player, you're being hired to play a piece to the bigger picture. If you don't look at it from that perspective, I think you're either, unless you're a really big name and people are willing to like sort of look past your your sort of overconfident ways that you're the centerpiece of this. I think as an up and coming session musician, you can't have an ego. You are there to do to play a part to the bigger picture. So if an artist says, I really like what you're doing, but in my mind, I really had this idea that this is what the part was going to sound like. And it's like, let's do that then. That's what you want the song to have. That's what I'm going to do. You need me to technically and physically play that part. That's it. Here's my creative input. Here's my like thoughts on how we could merge those two things or what I think could be better. If you don't like it, no problem. I think you'll find artists go, I really like that idea. And I had this idea. Maybe we can kind of marry those two things and that'll be a cool thing. Sometimes they go, I just want you to play this. And you have to be like, cool, no problem. That's what I'm going to do. And I think you need to be easygoing. I mean, these are the things people talk about all the time. You need to be a good hang. You need to be a cool person to be around. You need to be patient. You're dealing with a lot of personalities, either at a very high level in which there's a big personalities and ego, or you're dealing with someone who doesn't know anything of what they're doing. You still need to be a good person to be around in either on a tour bus. I mean, I just watched this the other day. It was like, I just talked about this other day. You're on stage for an hour. The other 23 hours, you just need to be with these people. So you got to be able to like be someone they want to be around for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks at a time. Yeah. So those are ones that we've all heard. But I think the best part about being a session player is understanding that you are bringing a piece to the table. So for instance, the other day, a couple months ago, a friend came to me. He had written some songs and he needed live drums recorded to it. And we did it. He loved it. And in the middle of the song, he put this sort of MIDI drum beat pattern that he really liked. And it was part of the song before I had come in. And I was like, I think it's off timing wise. I know what you're trying to do, but I feel like it's off a little bit. And when I hear it, it's not like I like cringing, but I hear it and I'm like, something's not right. We can make this better. He released the song and it had that part in it the way that he wanted. He's like, I'm sorry, man. There's something about it. I like the looseness of it and how it comes back to your playing and it's super tight. But I was like, bro, this is your song. This is your project. Absolutely. I'm so glad that you made that call. I gave you a little bit of my thoughts on it, but I'm glad you stuck with your guns and did it the way you want. Do I personally like it? I'm like, I think if it was my record, I would have been line those things up better. But that's not me. And I'm so proud to be a part of it. And I'm glad that we came to like a creative like thing and I got to say my piece. You got to say yours and you made a decision. That's how it should be done. I still promoted the song and said I was so happy to work on this with my friend. And that was the end of it. But that happens all the time. It may not be my aesthetic or my vibe or how I want to do it. That's not what I got hired to do. I got hired to do this the way that the artist sees it. And I think that a lot of people, that doesn't work for them. Yeah. And so that's what it means to be a session player. That's why being I like that the camera doesn't ever make it to the back of the stage where the drums are. I like playing my role on stage and being a part of how to make the song sound good.
So the second one was because you've got a long list of endorsers. Are there any tips on how to land an endorsement?
Yeah, the endorsement world has significantly changed since COVID. I think a lot of these companies really took mega financial hits and they're still recovering and trying to, a lot of their factories are still catching up with orders that were, going in because people weren't working. But the baseline of it was that I tell people is it's about loyalty to a brand. I think people look at endorsements the wrong way. I think they look at them as I'm getting a bunch of free equipment. I'm sure you've heard this before.
Oh yeah.
It's not about free equipment. It's not. It's about how does what you're bringing to the table benefit them, and how does their support benefit you? And would you use those products regardless if you had an endorsement? That's the stuff that they pay attention to. If you send a blanket email to Zildjian and say, "Hey, I'm a drummer. I love your products. I use them all the time, um, and yeah, I'm so loyal. I use it all the time." And then you send that one to Sabian, and then you send that one to Peisty and Meinl. It's at some level that industry talks. It's like they do keep an eye on what's going on out there. Now, there's different variations of in getting endorsements. I play in the biggest band in the world. It would behoove you to put me on your roster because of the visibility that your equipment will get at a very high level. Fine, that makes sense. Then there's my level where I'm not the biggest artist in the world. I don't play with the biggest artists in the world, but I am a great advocate for your products, and I can get that out. I'm like your sort of foot soldier on the ground. I have kids coming in and asking, "Hey, why did you I noticed that you really love the 22-inch K Constantinople medium thin low. You use it a lot on sessions. Can you tell me why?" Absolutely. I'm going to tell you these reasons why I love that product. They have an unofficial salesperson constantly talking about, the products that they use. That is so valuable to them. I think I take it to the next level with my Instagram and my social media, where I highlight these products day in and day out and talk about them. I know people that buy Ludwig drum sets specifically because I use them. They match my setups. They buy the cymbals. I'm sure that I've sold tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in products based on the fact that people like me and they like what I do. That is almost more valuable to the companies than you're the biggest drummer in the world. And if you're the biggest drummer in the world and you're playing arenas every night, do you think anybody can see from the back of the arena what equipment you're using? Or if you're not taking pictures of it, a lot of those drummers are like, I already have the biggest gig in the world. I don't need to take pictures of the products. You need me. I don't need you. If you don't want to give me free stuff, I'm going to go over to this company over here. They'll give me free stuff. I'm not stereotyping. I'm just generalizing. But what I see happening in the industry. Do you want to know why a drum tutor, a drum teacher who works with kids who are 5 to 8 years old, why they're more valuable than big pop star artists drummer? Is because that person is one-on-one with a kid who's starting an instrument, who's getting introduced to new products, who's getting their feel, and they're using these drums and they go, wow, what are these? These are Zildjian, these are Vickfirth, these are Ludwig drums. They're starting. That's what they know. And that teacher is giving lifelong fans the introduction to those products. So you may never have heard about that drum teacher. I guarantee those companies are looking for that person. You're a really successful music school teacher. You're a teacher at Berkeley. You have 100 private students. Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you all the free products in your world because those students are going to be using those products for the rest of their life. So with that being said, getting endorsements is, if you're a drummer and you're like, well, I'm ready for the next stage of my career. I really want to be a Zildjian artist. I really want to be a Vickfirth artist. I'm like, awesome. You know what? I see that you're using You got Sabian over here on this setup. You got Zildjian over here. You got a couple Pisces symbols. That's great. I know that you kind of, a lot of these students don't have the money to buy the equipment they want. It's like, but I'm telling you this, you want to be a Zildjian artist, get yourself your Zildjian setups, use them, use your Vic First sticks, and just go about your career the way that you would. Let Zildjian know that you are interested in being an artist and that you're going to keep working to stay on their radar and keep that conversation going with the AR team. Showcase those instruments, show that your trajectory keeps growing, and that through that trajectory and through your growth as a drummer, and as your career takes off and keeps going, you're still using those products. You're still standing behind those products, whether you're getting them for free or not. That's what they want to see. I started the conversation with Zildjian for 5 years before they gave me an endorsement. I mean, I was using that stuff long before, but I started the conversation with the AR team and said, hey, hi, I'm Jonathan. I'm doing this stuff. Keep an eye on me. Really love your stuff. And I did it. And you want to know what? I worked with the AR people for years. They already knew who I was. We had mutual, like, we had a friendship. But from an AR they still didn't sign me. They only signed me when they said, what you're doing in your career is worthy of us starting this relationship. Same thing with Ludwig, same thing with Vic Firth and Evans. They all kept an eye on how my career was going and how it progressed, even though I had the direct line to them, anyways. They did it when they felt it was the right thing to do. A couple of my endorsements are from an educational side because of how many students I work with on a day-to-day basis. And a lot of these students, when I call Ludwig and say, hey, we don't have any Ludwig kits at Berkeley for the students to use, that kit couldn't have gotten here faster. That thing was literally put in the back of a car and driven from Monroe, North Carolina, to put it in here. Same thing with the snare drum. Same thing with, like, I get calls all the time from Bald Man Percussion. They do the junk hats. I don't know if you've ever, they were like, we'd love your students to use it. I'm like, absolutely, send it up here. I'm going to put it on a kit for them to use. That is so valuable to them. Much more valuable than, I'm not saying that this is wrong because but Travis Barker using Zildjian, he's actually a really great promoter of Zildjian and really, like, hands-on and loves Zildjian products. But I'm saying, if he never said anything about Zildjian and somebody says, what equipment to use? You go, I don't know. He'd still be valuable to Zildjian because they can then say, we have the drummer from Blink 182 using our products. Not that it goes as a two-way street, but from someone like me, I shout them out, they shout me out. That's how that relationship, sort of works. When I go overseas to go on tour and I say, hey guys, do you have some Zildjians I can use over there? Absolutely, Jonathan, we got you covered. No
That's
worries.
Awesome.
That kind of stuff, to me, that's the benefit. Then I don't have to load my drums on the plane. I'll get them when I get over there. I'm happy to use it all. That's where it benefits me, as a drummer. And from their perspective, like I said, I guarantee if I ever tried to add it up, I bet they've sold hundreds of thousands of dollars in equipment based on me having conversations with drummers. Hey man, I need to buy one setup for my drums. I can't afford to have all the cymbals. What do you recommend? I'm like, all right, what are we trying to do here? Well, I want to be a studio drummer. I want to be a live drummer. What's a good setup? Well, let me see. I use this, and this, and this is the reasons why. We break it down. They put up the $1,000 or $1,500 to get the setup that they want. That's versatile. That wouldn't be possible without me working with Zildjian and trying out all of this stuff and working with it, bringing it into the studio. That's where that relationship is worthwhile to everybody involved. If you're not willing to go that extra mile to do that, to try and get the endorsement or the loyalty, they're not going to see that as a benefit to them.
No, that's right. And I think to myself as well is like, if someone's contacting Zildjian for an endorsement or whichever company, it's like, okay, how often do you buy symbols as well? It's worthwhile just buying it yourself and not not trying to get some form of a handout.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I have a lot of equipment, definitely too much. I'm very, very fortunate. I use the same setup in the studio often.
Yeah.
I have my go-to stuff. I have my go-to snare drum. I have my go-to drum set. I have my go-to products, and I use those consistently. So even if I didn't have everything else, I figured out what works and what sound I like. And it's nice to be able to have options and be able to try different things. But for the most part, I found what really, really works. I have a cymbal bag that I keep, basically has this one setup that I use pretty much with it. Anytime I go somewhere, if I have a live gig, I can just grab that and I know it's going to work for whatever. But that takes me years and years and years of understanding why that product is the way it is, what the process was to make that, why that material that was used, it works really well in certain situations and stuff like that. There's no timetable here. It's about learning and growing and creating relationships with companies that are sustainable. They don't want to sign someone who in 3 years isn't going to be there anymore.
Yeah.
A lot of the Berkeley professors that we have are going on year 25, year 30 with Zildjian at this point.
Wow.
You know, it's a long time.
And at the end of the day as well, just touching on how you said you have your most used set, is like that contributes to your unique sound as well. By having those go-to symbols, it's like that's my sound by default. And then if I need to swap things out or go for a different sound, I can.
Yeah, my Instagram messages are filled with, hey, can you tell me why? I'm thinking between the 21-inch A Sweet Ride or the new K 21-inch K Sweet Ride or the 23. What do you recommend? It's like Zildjian sitting back and going, that's exactly what we want to happen. We want that communication to happen, because they can't call Zildjian and ask. They can't always go to the store. They can watch things on the video, but who knows if those have been mic'd, to specifically sound really good. Jonathan, we can reach out to Jonathan and say, what is the difference? And I'm saying, all right, let's break this down. I think they're both really great symbols. I think that the K Sweet Ride is now integrating that K sound. And here's the record that I use that K Sweet sound on. Here's the record that I use that A Sweet Ride on. What do you think? I mean, you can't go wrong with either, but you got to pick one. Let's try to figure out why, which one you want to pick. I always check in afterwards, or somebody goes, hey dude, check out my setup. I finally did it. I spent two paychecks worth on this. I was like, what do you think? He's like, I love it, dude. I'm so happy with the choices that I made. I don't have to, at this point, I don't have to worry so much that this is the only setup I have, but I worry that person got to go, hey, this is the only setup I can have for now.
Yeah.
And I need to be the right one. Yeah, absolutely. I get it. I remember buying my first line of cymbals, and it was like, holy crap, I'm spending all of this money. I still have those cymbals. I still use the same 21-inch A Sweet Ride that I bought for myself for like $300 in like 2000. Oh gosh, I mean, I think I've probably had it for 20 years or something like that. Now I still have it. It's got keyholes in it, but I still use it. And I made the right call back when I saved that money for when that came out.
Well, this is my sign. I recently bought a set of Zildjian K sweets. Absolutely love them.
Yeah.
But I've always wanted the A sweet ride as well. So yeah, you've convinced me.
Gee, it's 21 inch to me is the perfect size for a ride cymbal.
Yeah.
It's crashable. The decay isn't go on for hours after you hit it. It gets in and out. It's warm. It's perfect. This is why when Zildjian puts out a new product, they don't do it so much anymore, but when Zildjian put out like the K suite, I have a lot of those prototypes
Oh
that
wow.
before they became the K suite series, and the factory would send me them and be like, we want you to try this and let us know what you think. Do you think
Cool.
you feel like this is going to be worth going out? Like, hell yeah. Same thing with the paper thin crashes. This is why they have artists. So they send it the artists and they ask the artists, what do you think? Is this worth going into mass production for? This is what we're thinking about doing. I've used 14-inch concept shop fat hats when I went on Seth Meyers. So I had the concept line on there, and then the next year they put out the fat hats as a regular product. And I was like, I used it for that show, and I thought they were perfect. They're such a great product, and it's cool to know that like this is a short run that we're doing. We think these could be cool. What do you think? And they sounded great on TV.
Yep. And so now it's a permanent staple of
Yeah, fat hats. They're awesome.
That's cool. I'm gonna have to check them out. I actually haven't heard of them yet. I keep up to date with Zildjian, but somehow they've I must have missed them.
I think always putting out.
Yeah.
I feel like things are. I feel like a lot of their marketing now is geared towards lines or series of products that are more affordable. So
Okay.
like, some of like the S line and stuff like that, which is you can buy a pack of them for the cost of one set of hi-hats for, this other stuff. So yeah, it's great to make high-end products, but a lot of people that doesn't work for a lot of people. So
Yeah.
you gotta be understanding that a new drummer is going to be like, I want a crash ride, hi-hat, and maybe an effects cymbal or something cool. And I want to get it all for $600. It's like, well, you got to make that happen,
Yeah.
that's important. So yeah, I think that's a big thing with endorsements is making sure that the benefit is for both the company and you, and how do you bring that to the table for these companies to see?
Yeah. Um, so thanks for all that with going into in depth with the endorsement question.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to add or ask that you think like that you just want to share with people regarding anything, whatever?
Well, I think we touched, this was really a very full and engaging. I love this conversation. I think for me, I think I really would like to let people know, if whoever's listening to this, and it's that I don't to reach out to ask those questions, whether they want more details on some of the stuff that we talked about, whether they have other questions about drums, career, stuff like that. I feel like I'm in this point in my career where I've done a lot. Now it's my turn to sort of give back to the other people, the information that I have. I feel like a lot of people think that well, not specific to me, but they don't think they can reach out. And maybe there are people that they can't, that don't want to field those questions. I like to say, ask those. I'm always willing to chat and provide whatever insight I have, because it does benefit me too to hear what's going on out there. Maybe that's valuable to me. Maybe that's an area that I've had issues with, and we can work it out together. So I think for me, whoever's listening, is to really say, ask those questions, reach out to me. We can talk equipment, career, social media, marketing, how to get your name out there. I do it with the kids here. Those kids are the ones paying my salary at Berkeley, but it's also for the people that there's no monetary gain for me to have, over here. It's all stuff that people who took the time for me when I reached out and asked those questions, or open doors for me. This is my turn to give back and use my platform as a resource for other people. So that's always something that I like to say, that please do know that I'm approachable and attainable to get in touch with and stuff like that.
That's beautiful, man. Really
And
nice.
everybody knows Pharrell. I'd really like him to use my drum pack.
I'll tag I'll tag him when this gets released.
Okay, cool. Yeah, super cool chatting with you, man.
Likewise, Jonathan. Just one more thing. How can drop some ways for everyone to reach you?
Instagram, I tend to be on most, just because it's a where I spend most of my time. So JMU, so Jonathan Matthew Ulman, but JMU Drums. It's the same on Facebook. It's the same on pretty much all the platforms that I would have. But yeah, TikTok, which I use occasionally. I more use it because it's entertaining. But Instagram, JMU Drums. Give a follow or whatever if you want to look at my page, or seriously just reach out to me there. If you need creative work, you still can go through JMU Drums, but obviously JMU Creative is the new business. And then if people want to do it more personal, it's ulman.jonathan@gmail.com if they want to reach out and ask a question there. That way you can actually type out all the stuff that you want to do. But yeah, that would be the best way to get in touch.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Thank you so much. Like from the first message to now, you've been such an amazing human and pleasure to chat with. You're doing amazing things, and I can't wait to see more.
Thanks, Nick. I appreciate you, and I'm so glad to connect with you, and glad that you're doing all the things that you need to do to, navigate things in your life. So I think that's stay the course. And I hope all that hour-long training sessions that you're being, they're all going to be worth it, man. And then let me know if you come this way, and then I will let you know if I go that way.
100%. We'll be in touch anyway.
All right, brother.
All right. Thanks, man. Take care.
Yeah, take care.